Yeah, 3 legends.
Have we called in yet?
No, I didn't call it yet.
Okay. 3 lines from the top, AyinBase 16. Okay, good.
Now I've been all set. Yes, explain.
But it goes back to when we said ha'ora the ha'ora. So we gave that an example of a candle. It says from the sun, if someone can see, that's the first ha'ora. If the sun is enabling someone to be able not to see. And then we said if there's a light, a candle, focused light, you can only see that's a ha'ora. So let's say the candle. If you say ha'ora means 2 steps. What's the 2 steps by the candle?
By the candle itself?
Order? Yeah, the first order one is the second one. Order means this first order, then from that order comes the second order. So.
All right.
That's a question. Can you repeat the question?
Yeah, the Shlomo wants to know, on the candle level itself, what are the 2 levels that we can identify as ha'ora and ha'ora de ha'ora?
On which level? Candle?
By a candle. We have a motion from the sun. Then we said ha'ora de ha'ora, we used a candle like as a motion for that. Actually in the sun itself there is, but I want that we should have a sense what we mean by ha'ora and what we mean by ha'ora de ha'ora. Ha'ora de ha'ora is not difficult to identify once you understand what the significance of ha'ora is. A ha'ora, the whole concept, the whole principle of a ha'ora is in relation to that which we call an atzmi. The principle of an atzmi is that whatever its truth is, it is an essential truth. It is not a truth that is a derivative of some kind of an other effect, of another cause. The nefesh, the life in the nefesh. The nefesh, the guf lives from the nefesh. The nefesh, what does it live from?
What?
Hashem put life into the nefesh directly. Nefesh is a living entity.
You mean body? Just nefesh.
Nefesh is a soul.
Yeah. Life of the body. Gives life to the body, right?
I'm talking about the nefesh itself, the life in the nefesh itself.
Okay.
Perhaps, since we are getting into this, perhaps we should go a little bit deeper into that itself. we identify life also in a very precarious and superficial manner. To us, life is in contrast to lifelessness. What's the opposite of life? Lifelessness. Anything that's alive, a cat is also alive. And we don't understand that life either. That life is also a godly creation. But in a human being, if he lives at the level of a cat, we don't consider that life. Life, in the true sense of the word, you say the nefesh is alive. Is the nefesh recognition, the nefesh knowledge of the godly truth. That's life. Chassidus explains that the nefesh is first and foremost mislavish in the guf, in the brain. And what's special in the brain versus the rest of the body? The rest of the body also lives. The rest of the body gets a ha'orah of the life in the brain. And what is the life in the brain special, different? The life in the brain is not only life versus death. It's a life where you sense what is life, the truth of life. It has to be a life. In the brain, we know the godly truth. So the life there is not just the effect of life, which is not death. It is life itself. It's the godly presence itself. In the brain, we have the koyach ha-chokhmah. And Chokhmah views and sees the direct godly truth. That's life. We always demonstrate, we always point into this, that a person is alive, so even if he has a cut in his finger, and the finger is really damaged, the life in the finger will heal that cut. Okay, let us reflect. Why will the life in the finger heal the cut? Okay, so we always say the life will heal the cut because the cut did not affect the life. It affected only the physical part, the recipient, the keli, but it did not affect the life itself. Why did it not affect the life? You're interfering with its life-giving force. Why did it not affect the life?
Because this is doctrine, it's affecting just the gift, you can't affect the life. Life is a rachman, is a good thing.
So,
Life you can touch. Life is something.
all right. You mean because a knife is a physical thing cannot, but the knife, the life is in the finger. The life that's in the finger is related to the physical thing. I mean, there's much more to discuss, but It really doesn't make any sense. The life in the finger is a life that is at the level of relating to the finger, to the physical.
The light in the finger is an aura of what's in the brain. The brain itself, though, has in it the quality of atzmo. The light, the aura that comes from the brain, which the body, that's really a limited form. But this fine state as in the brain, so the concept of lacking is a totally foreign concept to the etzem, which is the nutrition term.
All right. This is where we're going to, but I want to avoid the generalizations. I want to be able to identify so what we mean by atzmo. These are terms which we use all the time. I'm not looking for an answer. I'm looking for an explanation. Got a difference?
Yeah.
Now you're talking like a scientist.
No, not as I said, ever.
What are you looking for an explanation of?
Why is it that when you cut your finger, the life in the finger has not been affected? And that life will then cure the finger. Force the finger to heal in a proper way to the point where you can't even identify where the cut was. In other words, it reinitializes it, as if it was being created from scratch. From initial.
I'll try one more, because that life, which is on the level of the finger, has a source, and it takes from that source.
Right. Okay. Again, so what's so special about that source?
Source is not on the level of the gashmis.
The source is giving life to the finger. Now the life in the finger has been cut, so it's being cut off from the source. Right. The source is giving. You're interfering with the whole process. As I said, I'm looking for the sense, the explanation. What is actually the challenge is very big because Seichel cannot understand. We don't understand what life is in the first place. But nevertheless, we are experiencing life. We recognize its uniqueness. We recognize its indestructibility. What is unique in the life versus the finger? Why can you cut the finger? Why can't you cut their life?
Life is connected to its source.
Huh?
Life is connected to its source,
Right.
which is not being affected.
Okay. We'll follow through every opinion. We learned over here an interesting thing. I hope we recognize how profound this is. We said a person has a name. That name is connected to the source. And he can divest himself from that name. That name also can be bestowed and applied to an object of the person. This is my sefer.
I'm sorry, you said he can divest himself of that name?
You cannot.
Cannot.
You cannot divest yourself from the name. And yet, that name, okay, then there's the other level, where the name is attached to an object. And you say that this is his house or his sefer, that can be removed. So it's very simply, he sells the house or he sells the object, and that becomes owned by somebody else, and his name is removed from it. So we discussed this.
That's what we're referring to when we say that he's called by the name.
But not yet.
Pardon me?
We didn't get to that yet. A person has a name, and we say that he cannot divest himself from the name. But if the name is applied to an object, that can be changed. It can be removed.
And is that the level of called by a name?
No, wait a second. Don't mix this up.
Okay.
Just that. So we pointed out this seems to be a so to speak an anomaly, and it seems to be a truism. The fact that it's applied to the object is insignificant. There is no depth or truth to that, the way we see it. So what is it saying? That name can be removed. It's not there in the first place.
The name being that it belongs to the person?
Yeah. It's a very important question here. And we discussed this multiple times. That there is a unique truth about the human being in the world. In simple terms, it means this. The world was created by God, and it's still owned by God. He never gave it up. And everything that exists in the world are there by His grace, by His permission. Every creature in the world has a different degree and level of that permission. There are things in the world that you're allowed to destroy, which means the permission that they have to be in the world is very precarious, very superficial. There are animals that you can kill, just kill, not even for food. Nobody hesitates to step on a cockroach. Oh, it's Emerson's creation. And his right to be, his right to be is very, very, very shallow. Then there are things that you're not allowed to destroy. A person in the Torah, a fruit tree, you're not allowed to destroy. Why aren't you allowed to destroy a fruit tree? Because the fruit tree has its own value. You're not allowed to destroy a fruit tree because the fruit tree is brought into the world to sustain, to give sustenance to the human being and to the world and to other animals. The Pasuk says, "Kemelo teicha," so it's because that's what you eat. You're not allowed to destroy it. What does this tell us? That with all the creatures in the world, there's one creature that is central to the entire creation of the world. That gives the world, so to speak, a sense of godly reality. And that's a human being. His presence in the world is a must-be. Very precarious thing. It's a must-be. Like we always ask the question, what would the world be without a human being? There's no human beings in the world. Is there anything worth paying attention to? It's nothing. Because there's no godly truth and there's no significance. There's nothing there. The human being is that creature that the Pasuk says, this is what defines what the world is. That's why Adam Arishu was given the task of naming all the creatures. Who names a baby is born? Who names a baby? The parents. Adam Arishu names all the creatures because they are here, they belong to him. They're his charge. And he named them according to his evaluation of them. Thus, we come to realize that this little human being, who also has a state of life and lifelessness, but his presence in the world has a godly mandate. A godly mandate means God wants the world, God wants a human being. The human being you're not allowed God to kill. If you kill a human being, you're violating the godly mandate, the godly command of godly presence in the world. This is the worst transgression existed. Rama said, this is the worst that can be. I will mention an interesting thing. And there was the 6-day war, and they entered at Yerushalayim, and they were fighting over the Har Beis. And we were very careful not to bombard, not to bomb the enemy, because lest the bomb will hit a very treasured piece, like the Kislev. Who wants to risk destroying the Kislev? Has for sure. The Rebbe said, to risk one life, to save the Kislev is osir. It's forbidden. One Jewish life, this is the reality. This. Okay, so coming back to this. Therefore, since the human presence in the world is of such enormous significance, it's a must-be. Therefore, when he owns an object, that ownership, he had the right to own the object. All the objects in the world are actually there to serve him. So when he owns, it's what's called true ownership. This we discussed many, many times. We have to break through the preconceived idea that ownership is a conventional agreement. Ownership is a godly decree. Who guarantees ownership of a property that a person owns? Not society. God himself. The Torah guarantees. Therefore, when a person's name is applied to a property, to an object, it's a real application. It's a real connection. It is his object. And therefore when we say, yes, it can be removed That's a tremendous statement. And how come it can be removed? Now that we've gone through all of these various stages, it can be removed because, yes, indeed, a person has the mandate and the right and the ability to own property. But to own this particular property is not a must-be, it is by his choice. When he chooses to own it, he owns it. Still, it has a limited reality. It's by his choice. This is why, by his choice, he can sell it to somebody else. This choice is real. He has the right to choose. But it does not go beyond that degree of reality. If somebody takes it from him without his permission, he is violating a halacha in the Torah. Because he has the right to choose, to apply his name to us. But he can remove it because this attachment of the name to the object is by his choice. His choice is very significant. The attachment of the name of the person to the person is at a higher level. This is already representing the neshama's attachment to the group. In other words, this has a greater degree of the godly command. The neshama should be the group. That's why it cannot be that easily removed. So coming back to the initial question, why is it that when you have a cut in the finger, the life in this was not cut? The answer is that the life is a must be by godly decree.
Life is a must be what?
By godly decree.
Oh.
It's not in the category of choice. It is there and could not be there. Of course it could not be there, but not from our vantage point, not from the point of relative to the body. It's in a different category. Okay, so now let's go back to the initial question of ha'ora and ha'ora the ha'ora and so on. The nefesh is an etzem chai. What does that mean? Nefesh is etzem chai. Now that we have sort of identified certain things. Nefesh is etzem chai. This is the chai is and the nefesh is by divine decree, not conditional or anything. The Rebbe said, put into the nefesh a godly life without any limit. It actually represents the godly force itself. The nefesh, he slaps us in the goof, where the nefesh gives chayes to the goof. That is a ha'ora. How do we identify, distinguish a lot, so to speak, in seichel, the ha'ora versus the etzem? we can readily see the atzmo is inseparable. The life in the nefesh is inseparable from the nefesh, whereas the ha'ora that's established in the guf is separable. You're not allowed to separate it, but it's still separable. But let us go maybe a little bit deeper into this.
Rabbi Paltiel, can I just clarify? You say the life in the nefesh, this is irrespective of the guf, in other words.
Oh yeah, the life and nefesh is important. I want to go just a little bit deeper in terms of our insight and understanding this thing. The guf lives because there is life in the guf. The nefesh lives not because there is life in the guf. The nefesh lives because it has a godly spark. Life in the nefesh is a very chitzonistic thing. It has a godly spark.
Life to the nefesh is a chitzonistic thing?
Right. This is why we call it life is like a ha'ora. This is how we can identify it. But the nefesh itself is even beyond that. So it's called etzem chai. Etzem chai is not chayus. Etzem chai is not identifiable. Etzem chai, as I said, is a godly spark, a godly planet. Now we have to go back all the way to the beginning. So at least in our seichel, we'll hear what we are talking about. we have absolutely no way to identify and to speak about God and godliness. One thing we know, and the Rambam says, the first principle is to know that there's a first being. What's the issue? What is a first being? First being means, in contrast to what we spoke about all the time, here now. The nefesh gives life to the brain, but there is still something that is occurring, something that gives it life. First being has no beginning. The reason that first being has no beginning is that this is, you can't even refer to it as a must be. Because godliness is not even defined by saying it exists. It's beyond the whole terminology of existence. But yes, existence is very significant because we exist and not exist. We can live and not live. Godliness is in a completely different, and does not even participate in this kind of discussion. Thus, the fact that the nefesh, okay, so this is what's called etzem nefesh. Then there is a ha'ora. The life element in the nefesh. The life element is in the nefesh is that part which actually can be identified external to the nefesh and can affect the body. That's a ha'ora. That's a change in the nefesh. This is not what the nefesh lives with. The guf lives from that chayas. The nefesh does not live with that chayas. All right. So coming back to the Ayin that we're discussing over here. ha'ora. Ha'ora means you know what? Let me step back a minute. Life versus the life of a living body versus a lifeless body. Life in the body and the body itself. From our vantage point, it would be like this. The body, I can fully identify the body, what it's made of, and its size and its whole existence. It's a composite of many little pieces and different kind of tissues and so forth. That's a body. The life in the body does not consist of little pieces. The life in the body, we have no way of identifying it. What is it consisting? In other words, even from our vantage point, we can say, life is a godly decree. It is not a worldly identifiable element. In other words, if we should bring it down to the clarity, we'll be like this. When I created the world, I created an object, created a body. Yes, I created a body. Life, he did not create a life that the life now can exist independently of its creator. It does not have an independent existence. Life is representative of the Creator's presence. Life is representative of the Creator's presence. There are different degrees and different levels. The human being, the nefesh, recognizes the Creator as being the source of life. That's why he is of such great significance. Other creatures do not recognize it. But nevertheless, life is representative of the Creator's presence. It's not a worldly presence. Any body in the world, we can take it apart into its components and put it together again. Not life. Life does not have a worldly presence. It's totally intangible. Why? And what is it? Well, it's a godly presence in the world. And that is what we call, it has no explanation, it's a motivation. It represents a truth that's beyond creation. This is why life itself cannot be damaged from the worldly activity, because it's completely beyond worldly parameters. If he can damage, he can only damage the effect of it. Okay, so here is the point of ha'ora. Ha'ora means how that essential truth of life, how that can be identified outside of its essential state. What is the effect of life? The effect of life is that something that the body that lives is not limited to a body presence, but okay, let me step back a moment. A body presence means this is what the body is structured, this is what the body is. The life in the body The life in the body is a statement. Now the body is not just there in fact, but it has to be this way. There is some force in it that says this is the way it should be. There's some force in the body that insists this is the way the body should be. So even if you damage the body, that force will restore it to the way it should be. Let us take our most the simplest of illustrations of this whole concept. It's very true, even though as simple as it is. You have a table, a piece of furniture in the house. It's a table. You bought it with money for it, a table, it stands in the house. What's the reality of the table? Is it because it's a table or because you want it there? I don't want to go all the way to the beginning. It's quite an obvious question. The haraya, should the table be broken, what happens? It stays broken? The one who brought it in the first place replaces it or fixes it. Why? Because it has a must-be element. Not the table mitzad atzmo. The table mitzad atzmo has no must be. It has a spirit that says it must be. That's the precarious. There's no must be in the world at all, in the world itself. But there's a chayes beyond it that says this is a must be. The whole world was created by godly decree, therefore the world is a must be. Coming back to the principle of what the Rebbe says over here, a person's name was applied to an object. That fact that a person's name is applied to an object, you have to understand very clearly. This is not merely a conventional thing. The reason that a person can own an object, and that his name is applied to the object, is because a person has an element in the world that's called a must-be element. He has a fundamental right of being. And therefore, when he owns an object, it becomes really his. By whom? By society, by him claiming no, by the creator of the world, who has put the person into the world and gave him that kind of a mandate. And therefore, when we see that a person can own an object and it becomes truly his, and his name is applied to it, and then we can remove that name, that is a revelation, that is an insight, that gives us an insight. And what is the insight that he gives us? That the application of the name to the object was only a ha'ara of the reality of the name, not the essence. For if it were the essence, it couldn't be removed. Right? A person's right to be in the world is a godly decree, and therefore he can own this ownership. This is a ha'ara of that godly decree. That's why it can be removed. But his presence in the world is not a ha'ara. That's an essential thing. God forbid that somebody takes a life. That's a capital sin without any recourse. because that is really the godly reality.
That's also ha'ara, no?
It's also a ha'ara, but at a much higher level. Just contrasting so that you have an idea what we're talking about. So what is a ha'ara? A ha'ara means a reflection of a real thing. In other words, the real thing is this is like a must be, this is the godly decree. And this is a ha'ara, the effect of that. The effect of that must be is that he can own a piece of property. But it's not a must be that he should own the property. That is not a must be. He can remove his name and not own it. He can own the property because he is a must be, but his ownership of the property is not a must be. There's no godly decree that he should own property. There's a godly decree that he should be in the world. And he should rule the world. Okay? This is not ha'ara. It is really a reflection of that essential truth, but only a reflection. The effect of it. We call the functional aspect of it.
The owning property would be like the ha'ara of the ha'ara.
Right. His presence in the world is like a ha'ara, and the ownership of the property is like ha'ara of the ha'ara. And what we are after over here is to explain that even a ha'ara of a ha'ara still maintains an essential quality. And even in our discussions here, like we said, that even though this is a ha'ara, the ha'ara ownership of property is far off, yet it's a direct reminder of the reality of the persons in the world. It's not just the effect of it and breaks away from it. It's a direct connect to it. All right, let's go inside. Okay. So, 3 lines from the top on page AyinBase 16. I don't know how much time we have left. Oh, this time is over here. All right. Once in a while, we have to go into this and get a sense of this. 3 lines on the top on page AyinBase 16. The Rabbi explained the line begins with the word legubay atzmo, and this is the conclusion of a statement, of an explanation, that there is the name of a person as it applies to himself. And we explained the principle of a name, that a name is also a ha'ara, an oir. What is it the ha'ara of? The ha'ara of the reality of the essential presence of the person. Every person has a name. I'm not going to go into it again, but let's discuss the whole. Animals don't have names. How do human beings have names? At birth. The reason they have names is because they have a real significance of their presence. And we name them, as we said, by a Sefer Torah or during the Beis. In other words, there's a God reality to this.
Talking about Hebrew names?
Turkish names. So the name of the person is applied to the person, and then the name can also be applied. His name can be applied to his property. I point out, applied to his property is his pashtus of the name. And there, the his pashtus is also a true thing, as we explained. It's a very real thing, but it's not on the same degree as the name applied to the person, which is called ha'ora de ha'ora. Okay, so now we look inside in this third line, v'zehu gamkein, and this also is the same difference. Ha'hefresh, this is also the difference in Etzem Hashem Kriyas Hashem, between the Etzem Hashem, the name itself, the Etzem of Hashem, and the Kriyas Hashem, and when he is being called by his name. Baruch, this is what your question. The Kriyas Hashem. Kriyas Hashem means when a person is being referred to by name. Okay. The Etzem Hashem, where the very fact that a person has a name, this is called Etzem Hashem. Hu bivchinas shaychus v'chibur love, has the essence, the element of shaychus, a connect, a relationship, and chibur, and a joining to him. It is connected to him. As we said before, you can't even shed, he can't even divest himself of his name. Bivchinas shaychus v'chibur love. But then when he is being called by name, he does not have that type of a joining to him. It's not part of him kol kach to the same degree. When it says kol kach, means to say that there too it has his chabros. It's also connected to him, but not to that same degree.
But Paltiel, I missed your answer to my question. I'm sorry.
The Rebbe says that this is the difference between Etzem Hashem and the Kriyas Hashem. That when the Kriyas Hashem, this is already a second level, and ha'ora de ha'ora. We're discussing it. The Etzem Hashem will begin the Shachas v'chibur elov, Mashinika b'shem ein ze begin the chibur kol kach. The challenge that we have here, and we'll come back, but I just want to point out, nothing should be dismissed, should be taken lightly over here. This is only conventional, it has no significance. Every step and every level where a person's name is invoked is connected to the truth of the person himself. Because it's all bound up with this principle that a person has a name. And why does a person have a name? Because he deserves a name. Because his presence in the world is very real. That's why he has a
My
name.
question in part was, in this level of he is called by a name, this refers to the chosim that are called by his name, as well as when someone else calls him by name?
We're talking about someone else calling him by name.
That's what we were talking about?
Yes. The name as given to him, that's not being called. That's his name.
So when
Why does a person have a name?
When his name is attached to property, that's
To him.
also
Attached to property, that's a way of being called by name.
that's being called by name. Okay.
That's the second one. It really behooves us to to get a sense why the human being must have a name. The Rebbe created all the animals, everything. And yet, when he came to naming the animals, he let other Morisha name them. And they were not named individually, named by species. The human being, the Rebbe created not by species, he created one entity, one single entity. And all others were derivatives of that entity. All the different quote-unquote species of human beings were derivatives of that one perfect specimen. And who named the other Marishin? Hashem himself named him. Vayikra Shmom Adam. He named him. And the significance of this is that a human being, every human being is an individual creation. He's not part of a species. Every human being is an individual creation. An individual godly creation. Therefore, he has a name. It's a real entity. He has his own destiny, his own shlichus, his own purpose in life. That's why he has a name. Your house has an address. The rooms in your house don't have an address. Because they're not standalone entities. This is the pshat. Even though there is many people, millions, every individual has a name of his own. Because every individual is a direct creation by God of this individual person. Every individual human being, especially Ayin, is representative of the reign of the king of the world.
When you say human being has a name, we're talking about mainly about Yid. We're talking about
Yid. We're talking about Yid.
Because, we could also say, there are species in animal, but there's also species in the whole spectrum of human beings. There's Chinese, there's Indian, black people.
Well, let's talk about Eden. The truth is that Goyim also have a status, because Goyim could become Eden. They make a bracha in the morning and say, Shelo Yosani Goy, Shelo Yosani Eved, Shelo Yosani Isha. Each one of these Shelo Yosani is a lower level. Shelo Yosani Goy is the least. Why? Because a Goy can become a Yid. An Eved cannot easily, by his own choice, become a Chayv in mitzvahs. He has to be free. An Isha, she is in the worst. She cannot become Chayv in mitzvahs like a man. So that's the last. What does that tell us? What does that tell us? It tells us that what really gives significance to existence and to life and to human life. What makes a human being significant? is the fact that there is mitzvahs and neighbors. The Rebbe should recognize him as a real presence and give him mitzvahs. And thereby he is present, and the Rebbe is present in the world through him. There could not be mitzvahs given to animals, Lahavdil. Not because they don't, there's no point to it. They don't have that kind of a status. All right, there's much more to speak about, but I'm sure that we can project our own sake a little bit. So I just want to go into the next line, so we'll have the full thing. Hagam the etzem Hashem ugankin rak Shem v'lei Baal Hashem. Although the etzem Hashem, the name as it applies to the person, is also only a name, not Baal Hashem. It is not him, it is his name. When you say it is not him, it is his name, means to say, then his name is a reflection, is a ha'ara of him. Because that he is a human being, he has this special status. The reflection of that is that he has a name. That's only a ha'ara. And yet, this ha'ara is very closely and tightly connected to him, whereas when this name is applied to an object, when it's being called by the name, this is a ha'ara de ha'ara. This is not the real person. Even though that Yireh Hashem is also not the Baal Hashem, it's only a name. The Komikim still harei b'chinas shaychus in love. It has an element of connection to him. Yoiser more than Kriz Hashem shu legabe azulos. More than the calling of the name, which is true only legabe azulos, only true legabe someone else. In other words, whether his name is being applied to a property or his name is being used to refer to him. This is the name as it applies to the outside of him. This is a ha'ara de ha'ara. Ha'ara de ha'ara means the ha'ara of the person as taken, as separated from him. And now it is connected, it is related to someone else, Zulas. As I said, the ultimate the discussion over here is to point out that even when you have the name, the ha'ara, at the further and further and further down level, it is still a ha'ara of the etzem. And it still contains an element of the etzem. Only a reflection, but an element. And as you pointed out, only an etzem can have an oir, and therefore only an etzem can have a ha'ara and ha'ara de ha'ara. Simple to speaking, everybody understands. And an animal cannot own property. He cannot own property. No matter how much power the lion puts into his stirrup, he doesn't own it. A human being owns property. Why? Because in his name that's applied to the property, there is the human being himself. That goes along with that. It's as if he himself is present there through his name.
Atzmo and the ha'ora.
That's right. All right, this is it for this morning.